Mike Wilson, how are you today?
I'm good. How about you? How's everything out in the Midwest?
It's heating up. I'm going to spend some time at the pool this weekend.
Nice. Pool time is always good.
Yeah, find my inner Mike Wilson this weekend.
Your inner Mike. Well, you know what? I will give you this. You're probably spending pool time when typically most people spend time at the pool. I'm spending time at the pool at like 8 o'clock in the morning because it's relatively cool at 95. So, it's tough in the afternoon.
No, a pool's a pool. So
there we go.
This is episode 52 of the Campus Pressbox podcast of the Mothership podcast, if you will. Nice. Damian Bowman, our fearless leader, is unable to join us today or this week. Other things are calling his attention away. So I am joining the podcast this week. Once again, I am Seth Bloom. You've heard my voice on the SEC 411, and every once in a while I'll pop in when Damian asks me to on this podcast. And I am joined today, as I said, by Mr. Poolman himself, Mike Wilson. Mike, how are you again?
I'm doing very good. It is hot where I'm at, but that's okay. And we're getting closer to college football starting, so it's all good.
Yeah, and with college football approaching, there's plenty of on the field and off the field stuff to talk about. It's all serious in nature, so we'll kind of start with this really serious stuff and progress our way to just the more straight football stuff. With that said, Mike, you have brought us kind of a little stockpile of links to talk about today, and I think the first topic we were going to get into was the whole Mississippi State Jeffrey Simmons thing.
Very true.
That's
yes.
going on.
Yes. Now, for the people at home, do you want to explain what the crux of the situation is?
Yeah. Give us the summary of what's going on.
Oh, I was going to have you do that, but okay.
Oh, okay. I can do that as well.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm prepared. All right. So, Jeffrey Simmons is not a current Mississippi State football player for head coach Dan Mullen and his Mississippi State Bulldogs. Jeffrey Simmons is a 5-star recruit, so very highly he can play. Yeah, very highly sought after player. Well, Jeffrey got himself into some trouble. He found himself in an altercation involving his sister, and I believe it was one of his sister's friends.
Yes.
Who was another young lady. So, you have defensive tackle size Jeffrey Simmons involved in an altercation with his sister and his sister's female friend. One thing led to another, and the sister's friend wound up on the ground. I'm not exactly sure how she wound up on the ground, even after watching the video. I don't know if Jeffrey put her on the ground or if she found herself on the ground from the sister. And then Jeffrey he did start beating on her. So the authorities got involved, and I don't believe that he has been convicted of anything as of yet. He certainly wasn't as of last week.
He hasn't been.
All right, so he has not been convicted of anything. The video is not doing him any favors. You'd be hard pressed to say he did not do what he did. We don't know, based on the video, what led up to it. So where we find ourselves now is everybody's looking on and looking at what's gone on allegedly at Tennessee and what has gone on both allegedly and proven at Baylor. And they're saying, how can Mississippi State and head coach Dan Mullen, with a good conscience, take Jeffrey Simmons on as a part of their football team? Mike, where do you stand on this?
Now, let's just get this out of the way, because I know you and I both agree on this. You don't hit women. I mean, assaulting anybody, whether it's man or woman, is not the correct thing to do. And when you're a 5-star athlete or just an athlete in general, you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Just bottom line. However, okay, evidently this kid, and that's what he's a kid, there was something that happened that triggered something. Now, I've always said, you beat women, there's a special place, where for you, that kind of thing. However, if this kid, and this is what, I don't know, this is what I found. I mean, there was nothing that this kid did prior to this. He hadn't been arrested. He hadn't been caught on video beating somebody.
Not that we know of.
That we know of at all. Okay. For people to say, okay, let's just ruin this kid's opportunity to better himself, to prove to us that this was an outlier type of situation for him, and not, and like I said, not let him do that. I think it's totally wrong. We've all made mistakes. And I can almost, not that I want to guarantee this, but, situations like this, a lot of times the main culprit behind everything, I mean, there's always alcohol involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's something that comes up that, the girls were drinking, maybe he was drinking and tempers flared about something, I don't know. But to brand this kid, and not let him prove to us that he can change, or that this was just something that is not part of his DNA. I think is wrong. You got to allow the kid to improve himself. And I think the school itself is setting up a support system for him, if he ends up enrolling there.
Right, they are, and that places a lot of responsibility on the school as well. I mean, they're giving him a second chance. The school is in the football program, and if he doesn't pull his weight and doesn't behave, then I think all bets are off, so to speak. And
absolutely.
Both Mullen and the athletic director and the university as a whole will deserve every bit of criticism that comes their way. I think it's horribly unfair for somebody to look at the Jeffrey Simmons situation and say, well, it's just like Baylor. They're completely different. I may be going down a road with this next comment that maybe in hindsight, I won't want to go down. But there is a difference between what Jeffrey Simmons was caught on video doing and what those football players at Baylor did, and what seems like the entire Baylor administration enabled. There's a huge difference between the two. All right, now, with that said, Mike, can you think of another profession, and let's just call playing college football a profession for the purposes of this conversation? Can you think of another profession where if Jeffrey Simmons was caught on video doing what he did, where he would then, and it was first time offense, then he would be banned forever from doing what that profession was?
Absolutely not. You think of all the professional leagues, you think, and someone who is, driving drunk or gets caught high on weed or beating his wife or something, beating his girlfriend on videotape, Ray Rice, there are things in place in those leagues that help the league deal with it, and it helps the player try and deal with what he or she did. And if they don't And there are also consequences. Okay, they set this up. You go to this rehab, or you do this. You do A, B, and C. Okay, but you don't do A, B, and C. Then there are more severe consequences, or you're just gone. But I mean, I can't think of another league that just would throw somebody, out into the wolves and just say, okay, hey, nice talking to you. We'll have a nice life type of thing. No,
Right.
I can't think of anything.
Because a lot of college football fans right now with the Jeffrey Simmons situation, they seem to be taking the attitude, the opinion that the university should take a harsher stance with him than what the legal system is even going to take with him, because I don't think he's going to spend a day in prison for what he was caught doing on camera. Yet all of these college football fans around the country want him barred from college and barred from football.
It's unreasonable.
All right,
but I mean, we're talking about college football fans, and we all know "fan" is short for fanatic.
Well,
they tend to overthink things.
Well, not only the fans, it's the influential college football writers as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I didn't see many deviating opinions on this.
I couldn't find any.
No. All right. So speaking of domestic violence and rape.
Oh, well, okay. Hold up. Just like, I'm going to get on a little soapbox here.
Okay.
So you had said that, these influential college football writers, they're calling for him just to be gone as they sit up in their glass house, right? They're sitting up there going this is what we think should happen. This is what should happen. And I want to go to those college football writers, and not that any one of them did anything to the degree that this kid did, but if they ever screwed up, they ever did something one time, had a momentary lapse of judgment.
All right. Let's look at Andy Staples. All right.
Yeah.
He's an influential college football writer who was on, like everybody else, on the complete other side of the argument as we are on this. And he played at the University of Florida. He was a walk-on offensive lineman on one of their national championship teams.
So he has some skin in the game in terms of knowing, just knowing what reality actually is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think on some of those Florida teams that do you think there was anybody sketchy there? All right. Since he was a Florida Gator, and just because he played for them doesn't mean that he, has to be an apologist for everything that's going on with that program. But I'd be interested to go back and read, his thoughts on Aaron Hernandez and how Urban Meyer chose to deal with him.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Because Jeffrey Simmons, shouldn't be allowed to step foot on a college campus and shouldn't be allowed to ever play football again, then, someone like former Florida Gator Aaron Hernandez, he should have been kicked so far out of Gainesville based on what was being covered up and what he was up to there. I'd be interested to see what Andy Staples had written about all of that, just to compare it.
Yeah, because if you're gonna take that point of view that he should just be kicked out of football for whatever, okay, let's talk Baylor. There's plenty of people that think they should get the death penalty for what's going on there.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm not in favor of the death penalty.
All right. So we're kind of talking about now excessive punishment and punishment that's too lenient and everything in between. Let's move on to Stanford swimming. Yeah, we're a football podcast, but let's talk about Stanford swimming. And former Stanford swimmer, I believe he was an All-American, Brock Turner.
Yeah.
And Brock, he was just in court and I think received six months probation, or was it 6 months in jail?
It's 6 months sentence, which he'll, with good behavior, literally gets cut in half.
All right. So what Brock did to get himself in trouble with the law was he was at a party. As you suggested earlier in the podcast, Mike, alcohol was involved, and Brock raped an unconscious girl as she was passed out next to a dumpster. Mm-hmm. So that's the situation that's going on with that particular Stanford swimmer. And, myself included, everyone was outraged at this just significantly lenient sentence, at least what I would consider to be lenient. I mean, certainly not unprecedented, because you look at, Baylor and Sam Aquacho.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically all he got was like 10 years probation, I think is what it was. So, seemingly lenient sentences are not unheard of or unprecedented in situations like this. What was particularly shocking was the attitude that Brock Turner's father took. Bring us up to speed on that, Mike.
Now, I don't even know where to start with his father, because it's so disturbing, because being a father of a young woman, and hearing him spew, that this would cause him, would have a, this is even the judge. I mean, the judge says a prison sentence would have a severe impact on him. I don't think he'll be a danger to others. Dear God. And his father, he goes, it's 20 minutes of, you're degrading or denigrating the rape as 20 minutes of action out of 20 plus years of life.
Right. 20 minutes of action is what the father summarized all of this in. And I'm going to read something. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here. I wrote something about this on Campus Pressbox a few days ago. Yep. And, and what he said, what the father said about it was just 20 minutes of action. Well, here, I'll just read the direct quote from the father's letter. His life will never be one that he dreamed about and worked so hard to achieve. Dan A. Turner wrote in a letter arguing that his son should receive probation, not jail time. Quote, that is a steep price to pay for 20 minutes of action out of his 20 plus years of life. Here's the basic response that I had to that. Quoting myself, Mr. Turner needs to understand something, and that is that rape is not defined by a measurement of time. A woman can be raped in a matter of seconds, minutes, or hours. This kind of violation of a woman is not bound by time. It simply is. So I don't care how long the disgusting act took. All that matters is that it took place and that it exists.
And that your son is the culprit. Your son is the one convicted of it.
Right. And nobody should care about your son's ability to eat a ribeye steak or to eat snacks in the future, because that was also part of his letter. Was his son's appetite is completely shot, and Brock used to love ribeye steaks and now he just doesn't eat them. Well, boo freaking who?
Yeah, exactly. And when he says that 20 minutes of action out of 20 plus years of life, I just literally in my head, I'm like, well, let's just see when he goes to prison if he's going to get 20 minutes of action, and then we'll see how he feels, about the whole thing. And I'm absolutely positively in line with you, Seth, that it doesn't matter how long the assault took. The fact is the assault took place. It doesn't matter the time. And to get a sentence like this is outrageous. I mean, we had, and this is a local story down here in Phoenix. We had a guy in his 30s. He was convicted of raping, assaulting. There's like 9 or 10 felony charges against him. He was convicted on all of them. He got but the big ones revolved around rape and sexual assault. He got 137 years and he raped this one. And it was one. He wasn't repeatedly raping different women. It was one rape, one time down at ASU. 137 years. And this kid, who to me, and from what I've been reading about, he's an entitled kid. I mean, could this play into the whole narrative for the people that buy into white privilege?
That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah. I mean, to me, for the people that follow that narrative, that, good God, white kid, privileged swimmer, an elitist sport, an Olympic type elitist sport, goes to, he's at Stanford, an elitist school, for lack of a better term, an Ivy League school. Dear Lord, that to me, that for people that follow that narrative, that falls right in line with that.
It does. I think every situation is different, though, because it's not like it was the same judge.
Well, I'll give you that.
Who was presiding over each of these two, unique situations, and so I hesitate to say that the double standard that I was going to pinpoint was, everybody wanting. What seems like everybody wanting, Mississippi State football turned inside out over this, but nobody that I've heard or read is suggesting that Stanford swimming should be turned inside out over this. Yeah, right? Absolutely. It's because college football in general and the SEC in particular for football is seen as this huge corporation that needs to be taken down. I think that's part of it with how each of these two situations are being treated. It's like this college football is big business and they need to be shown their place.
Yeah, and God, I mean, once again, it's these people that sit up in their glass houses that have I don't know. There's one thing to write about college football like you and I do, and and thousands of other people write about it. But it's another thing to be in the belly of the beast and really know what the hell is going on with it. And that, I look at a lot of these writers and I go, okay, if you cover the team every day, yeah, you do have a sense of what is going on. But at the same time, there's so much, to me, there's still so much going on that we're not privy to. I mean, when I go to ASU practices or press conferences and stuff, we know the things that they want us to know, yeah. And so, but we don't know, who's flunking their classes or who was, maybe out too late and didn't play because of team rules, those kind of things all the time. So, and like you said, they want to take down college football because there's certain things that these writers want to see happen. They want to see the players paid.
Which I do too, to be fair.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people do. But I don't know where I just lost my thought. Holy crap.
All right. So here's something else with all of this, with just this whole topic in general of the Stanford swimmer and Jeffrey Simmons, to kind of move down the road to wrapping this segment up. Do you think Ole Miss quarterback Chad Kelly, he started out at Clemson and worked his way to Ole Miss. Do you think all of these writers think that he should still be playing college football? Have you heard anybody say he should not be playing college football because of that bar fight he got in Buffalo, New York, that involved a couple of bouncers?
I haven't heard, and to be truthfully honest, I haven't heard anybody say that he shouldn't be playing.
Right.
And to be honest with you, that barely rung a bell out here. Like we haven't heard hardly any of that, but I haven't seen or read anything that says, no, the kids, let the kid play, they have to come out against it. Yeah.
And going even further back with, Aaron Hernandez, who we brought up before.
Yeah.
He punched a bouncer. All right. Was anybody back then, and maybe they were, and I just wasn't as tuned into it. Do you think anybody back then was saying he should no longer be playing football? Because there's even a report that says that Florida may have paid off the bouncer whose eardrum Hernandez broke. Whether Florida actually paid the bouncer off, I think is probably debatable. But what doesn't seem debatable is Aaron Hernandez hitting somebody so hard that he broke the guy's eardrum. Was anybody saying Aaron Hernandez should no longer be playing football ever again, and we are just going to get on our soapbox and beat this drum into the ground?
Nope.
No.
Nobody. Not that I can remember. Yeah.
And you want to know why no one was going after Aaron Hernandez or Chad Kelly the same way they are Jeffrey Simmons? It's because the two people it's because the person that Aaron Hernandez hit and the people that Chad Kelly slugged were male. That's why.
Oh,
and I know we never hit a woman. I am not saying that we should hit women, but I'm also saying that we should not hit men. We shouldn't hit people, period. As a general rule, you should not commit assault regardless of the gender of the person who is on the other side of that potential punch in the end of your fist.
Absolutely. No, you're preaching to the choir here, buddy.
Right. So, that's part of the problem that I have with all of this as well. It's what I'm going to coin selective misogyny. Sometimes misogyny is acceptable. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're all equal. Other times we're all not equal. And depending on your gender, you should receive, kind of preferential treatment from society and from the law. Now, I hope nobody listening to this thinks that I'm lumping the Baylor situation in with that, because rape is rape, and it's altogether different, in my opinion, than what we're talking about with Aaron Hernandez and Chad Kelly and Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, that's just outright violation. But the same would hold true if one man raped another man as well. Rape is rape. Mm-hmm. But yet when it comes to situations like Jeffrey Simmons and Aaron Hernandez and Chad Kelly, we draw these lines in the sand. It's basically, boys are being boys.
Yeah, which is the biggest crock of shit that if my son ever hit somebody, I'd be, what the hell are you doing? You just created more stress for yourself. You're going to create more backlash, or you're going to just create more consequences for yourself than you're ready to deal with. Like, don't put your hands on another person.
Right. Because it's not going to end well for anybody.
Yeah. No, honestly. This is absolutely true with me. When, everybody, that I coach football, and Damien knows I coach and all that. And we got high school kids now. It's not on the college level, obviously, but you still have the same kind of conversation with them. I always tell them, we play football, and what we do on the football field, if you do that out in public, you're going to get arrested. So, if you think you're all that and you think you're going to put your hands on another person, then you know what? Then you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions. And, it is a yearly conversation we have with them that, look, you don't like people putting your hands on you. Mm-hmm. why would you think it's okay to put your hands on another person in a violent manner? Take away the whole, football field aspect of it. But I mean, so it's one of those things that we try to instill in the kids in the program that I'm with. But man, it sometimes it is harder. It's easier said than done, because we're dealing, and even with the Mississippi Mississippi State kid, we're dealing with teenagers, and it's, God, it is, you can say things over and over again and until you're blue in the face and hit your head against the wall. It is up to that person to realize no one wins, like
right.
you just said, no one, it's going to cause more stress than it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's round this podcast number 52 out with something quite a bit more lighthearted, I guess, if you will. I mean,
talking about college football,
right? I mean, with my bias against the Big 12, but anytime I'm talking about the Big 12, it's lighthearted. But it appears that the Big 12 is starting to get its business worked out. I mean, it seems like every week we hear something new about, expansion, like it's going to be, Cincinnati or Houston or Tulane or Tulsa or Memphis or any number of other teams that are essentially Texas Tech, to be quite honest. Every week we hear something about that. The most recent news is they're no longer talking expansion, and now they're going to go to a divisional format, and they're going to play a conference championship game with 10 teams.
Woohoo. I mean, let's face it, when Baylor and TCU were up for the college football playoff in the first year of the playoff, I mean, let's just be frank about it. Not having a championship game and that one extra game, I absolutely, to me, it kept them out of the playoff. And certainly it didn't help that Ohio State just, destroyed Wisconsin. But I think certainly this is headed in the right direction, because something had to be done. They had to put themselves in a spot where it's going to benefit them in some way if that Baylor TCU playoff scenario crept up again, and talking, reading some Big 12 blogs and all that kind of stuff. And, God, well, we still don't have 12 teams, and okay, but you're getting a championship game. Change you don't get everything that you want all at once. I'm like, for right now, you guys should just be happy you have a championship game.
Do you think that the Big 12 should expand at some point?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're going to expand. You got, and people forget about this. If you're going to expand, the academic part of it, it plays a big role.
That's so far overblown, Mike. Come on. Sell me on it. Make your argument. And then I'm going to blow it up with one team.
You're going to blow it up with one team.
Yep.
Okay. Is it going to be a Pac-12 team?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right.
So make your argument why the academic side of it should matter.
Well, I mean, it should matter to a point in terms of, what is their rank as a research type institution? That kind of thing to me, because you don't want to dilute the academic, I don't know, prowess. I don't know if that's the right word.
Reputation, prestige.
Yeah, that kind of thing that the other schools in the conference may already have, and bring in this school that the academics, let's just say, aren't as strong with them. So, I mean, the talk about Memphis, I'm like, you're going to bring Memphis in? Okay, if you're going to talk maybe, ratings and market and all that kind of thing, okay, maybe Memphis fits, but from an academic standpoint, they don't fit let's just say, Memphis is not exactly known as, high rigor, to get into the school, but go ahead and blow me up.
Nebraska. That's all. That's all you have to hear. Nebraska. Remember when the Big Ten was working through who they were going to initially expand with, and they were hell bent that whoever they brought into that conference must be an I'm drawing a complete blank on the initials now. It's the
like the initial teams that are going to let in.
Yes. I got so worked up with that that I lost the abbreviation. AAU. That's what they were kicked out of. They lost their AAU status, and that was the big thing with the Big Ten and expansion. Whoever they brought in must be another AAU institution, so all of the schools in the Big Ten could be a member of this highly prestigious academic club. And then pretty much as soon as Nebraska got into the Big Ten, they were kicked out of it. And I believe they were kicked out of it because 2 other Big Ten schools voted them out. It was for silly reasons. It's because their hospital research facility is not on campus. So completely silly. But nonetheless, they were kicked out of the institution that the Big Ten insisted all of their member schools be a part of. There was no call to kick Nebraska out of the Big Ten at that point. It doesn't seem to have diluted the Big Ten in any way. Nebraska hasn't brought national championships in football to them, the way that maybe everybody had hoped, but still they were a solid addition to the Big Ten, with or without their AAU status. So how a school fits in academically, I don't care about that, and I don't think it amounts to a hill of beans.
All right. Okay.
So there's my Nebraska argument.
there's your Nebraska argument. If they were to expand, who would you bring in?
The Big 12?
Yeah.
Well, Damien has swayed me on this. I used to be adamant that the Big 12 should expand to keep up with these other conferences. But if it's going to be somebody like Cincinnati or Memphis or BYU or some of these other schools that have been thrown around as possible additions, they don't really add anything, as far as TV sets or even quality of football. I poked fun at Texas Tech when we opened this segment up, but, you look at Cincinnati or Memphis and, great. You have Texas Tech and Iowa State. Why do you want a couple of other schools like that?
Like that, yeah.
Or even K-State, because K-State has had its fair share of success the same way Cincinnati and Memphis have. But if K-State were no longer in the Big 12, they're not going to make or break that conference. Kansas State. They're not. Just the way Cincinnati or Memphis or Houston or some of these other schools that have been thrown around aren't going to all of a sudden just make the Big 12 this juggernaut of a conference that it wasn't prior to their addition. So unless the Big 12 is going to work around their grant of rights and like a team like Florida State's grant of rights with the ACC, unless they're going to bring in a team like Florida State, I don't see why they do it. And if you're Florida State, what's really in it for you to move to the Big 12? Because all of these conferences are developing their own television contracts with ESPN or Fox or CBS or whoever the big networks are that are chosen for these conferences. So Florida State just stays in the ACC, and they're part of their own television conference, and they go head to head with Clemson year in and year out, and they're always in the college football playoff conversation because they're Florida State and they're doing what they're doing there. There's no reason for Florida State to go to the Big 12.
Yeah.
None.
Not when I think of the Big 12, I don't think Florida State. And I've said this 1,000 times. I'm like, maybe I'm old school. It just geographically, to me, Florida, that wouldn't fit.
Right, and part of the argument for like a Florida State or Louisville or Cincinnati or Memphis is creating that bridge between West Virginia and the rest of the conference. Well, that just proves West Virginia never should have been let into the Big 12 because
in the first place.
Right. I mean, they're basically on the far side of the moon. I mean, they're essentially the equivalent of Missouri in the SEC.
Yeah. I mean, it was the same talk when people out here were talking expansion again for the Pac-12 a few years ago, and they're talking Texas, Oklahoma State. I'm like, the Pac-12 is a West Coast conference. Texas, Oklahoma State, they're not West Coast. They're in the middle of Tornado Alley. No, we don't, I understood the whole market, TV ratings. I mean, I got it. But I'm like, there's just a big part of me that just be true to who you are geographically. The Big 12 is the teams in Texas and through Nebraska and that area. Not, and I don't know. I mean, I don't.
All right, so
yeah, go ahead.
They're talking realignment in the Big 12 and going to a divisional format. 5 teams, obviously, in each division, but it's the Big 12. They have 10 teams, so
yeah, whatever.
And count. Maybe they're going to do like a 6-4 thing. I don't know. Probably not, but I wouldn't put anything by them. So realignment in the Big 12 may not just be a one and done thing. The Iowa State president, I don't know if you saw this article from the Des Moines Register from yesterday that Damien dumped in Slack for us, but there's this idea being floated around that the Big 12 could realign yearly based on how well all the teams did the year before. Sort of like a professional European soccer type of formats. I think they do some of that sort of thing. Would you like to see the Big 12 realign every single year? It'd be such a Big 12 thing to do.
Jesus. Bowlesby, what the?
Realignment. It's such a great idea. We're doing it yearly.
God. Yeah. Okay. Let's use that as a model for the Pac-12. All right, Oregon, you're going to be in the South now because that's where USC and UCLA are. But I just completely made fun of it. But I don't think it's a half bad idea for the Big 12. I think it helps them manage, only having 10 teams and, doing 5-5 and having a championship game that is, in all likelihood going to be a rematch. I think this gives some intrigue and some creativity to it. And, you also, I think, set up possible scenarios where, maybe a Kansas or Iowa State has a shot at winning one of the divisions every once in a while. Oh, dear Lord.
They're just going to be the sacrificial lamb probably for, whichever Southern school they face in the conference championship game. But still, it's exposure and it's money. And it makes those schools feel like they have a fighting chance. So the Big 12 will become the conference whose slogan is "Gosh darn it, you just might."
So you're telling me
there's a chance.
Hey, there's the name of the podcast right there.
All right.
And when you look at a lot of this stuff, what do these leagues want? They want parity, right? They want a strong overall conference, and they want the little guy to feel good about themselves from time to time. This would make the Kansas, Iowa State, whoever else of the world, and like you said, probably feel good about themselves. I would have to sit and think, be like, is this something they would really want to do? Because I could just, because right off the top of my head, I'm like, what? you're going to realize, I can just see coaches like and ADs like, well, where are we at this year? Who are we playing this week kind of deal.
But I would also wonder, would they, if they potentially did that for basketball, and then I'm thinking back years when I think it was Larry Eustace was at Iowa State, and he wouldn't fly. He would drive everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes. Imagine the confusion for that poor guy. Where am I driving now? What division am I in?
Yeah. What party am I going to at what school this week? What am I doing?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Missouri, for basically getting that man fired.
Yeah. Tip your cap to that. Yeah. Wow. I mean, like I said, off the top of my head, it just seems kooky. Like it's a gimmick.
It's such a Big 12 thing, though.
Yeah. But maybe as I sit and think about it more, all right, why not give it a shot for a year or two? See how it goes. Yeah. Take feedback from the ADs, take feedback from the coaches, and just see if there's something you want to continue. I mean, you do it. If you're going to do it on an interim basis. The NFL treated the extra point as a 30-yard field goal this year.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And I think they're going to keep it. I mean, last time I heard that is sticking around. So if you do it in that way and just get feedback from everybody and just, the optics of it, kind of get over it. But I mean, maybe it will fly. Maybe it'll be the thing that separates the Big 12 from the Pac-12 or the SEC, in some way. And, but I mean, like I said, leagues are all about, and corporations are about parity. They want to make everybody feel like they got a shot.
Yep.
And like
this
you said,
would do it.
This would certainly do it. And this would probably generate, I don't know, at least a dozen articles from you.
The person who it would generate a dozen articles from, I think, is our friend Mitch Gatsky. Did you read what Mitch wrote yesterday?
I haven't got to it. I got to the first one that he wrote, and I got about halfway through the second, the one from yesterday.
All right, it fits in perfectly with this. Perfectly. So, I mean, I would encourage everybody who's listening to this to go out and read Mitch's article if you haven't already, because I, just speaking for myself, I read everything just like I listen to everybody's podcast from start to finish on a religious basis. Mike, you sounded great on this podcast last week, by the way.
No, okay.
All right. So on that note, tell everybody where they can find you out and about on social media.
Out on social media. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Pigskin Opinion. You can also find me obviously at campuspressbox.com, writing about basically everything Pac-12 and maybe some things that are not Pac-12, but for the most part, Pac-12. And you can email me at mike.wilson@campuspressbox.com, and we can have a fun email exchange.
All right. I'm Seth Marenblum, filling in for Damian Bowman. I can be found on Twitter at Seth Marenblum. I can be emailed at seth.marenblum@campuspressbox.com. My writing can be found on campuspressbox.com, and I also have my own personal individual website that I write on from time to time that is sethmarenblum.com.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
I got to throw that out there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I have my one reader. Once again, thank you, Damian Bowman, for letting me sit in today and hash all of this out with Mike Wilson. And Damian will be joining you again next week for Campus Press Box episode number 53. We're out.